Hello and welcome to JamHammer. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at cheap and effective techniques for restoring good old metal minis. We'll be using isopropyl alcohol to strip away paint, applying modelling putty to fill in gaps, and recycling household objects for pinning parts in place as we bring these disparate pieces together, resurrecting them as Slaanesh's noisiest of marines. You can find timecodes for this video in the description below, as well as links to help support the channel, including affiliates and a subscription one too. Almost 98% of folks who watch JamHammer content aren't subscribers, so please do click on this link if you enjoy this video or the channel, as it really helps and costs you nothing too. Now, I've just got back from visiting my hometown, and while I was there, dug out a few of the old minis from back when I first started collecting 40k during its 3rd edition. Something that really caught my eye were these bits and pieces that must have made up a squad of Noise Marines in my Black Legion army. At the time of writing, all the other major Chaos factions have their own codexes and their own shiny new units now that the World Eaters have been remastered. I was shocked to see that this upgrade set is still the same, and the only way to create Noise Marines. I do hope the irony of the Sons of Excess having the least amount of support isn't lost on Games Workshop. So I thought it was high time that Slaanesh's adherents got some love. I found just enough parts to make 3 Noise Marines, so we'll hopefully use these for a Compendium Traitor Kill team. Some of these minis, like this Marine, are actually assembled, but you can see from all the burrs and mould lines that I wasn't familiar with the concept of flash scraping back then. Though this is nothing compared to these poor chaps. The Champion and Sonic Blaster Marine are just reduced to limbs. And considering I was even lazier with painting back then, it's surprising that one of these is actually painted. This must have been later on my collecting years though, as there's attempts at highlighting on the legs here in that classic Emperor's Children pink, plus some shading on that shoulder pad. Even so, this paint has got to go. Now, you can use a few methods to remove paint from minis, but the cheapest and easiest method I found is to get yourself a bottle of isopropyl alcohol and give the minis a nice bath in a gross little pot that you've reserved for just this purpose. I've used a 70% alcohol in the past, and that does work, but takes a lot longer with you needing to soak the minis for several hours to get the paint to come away from the plastic. With this 100% stuff, that I'll leave a link to in the description, after just 5 minutes you can see that the paint is already falling away from the pair of legs and revealing the grey plastic underneath. To encourage this process though, I'm just going to give this piece a light rub with an old toothbrush. If you're doing this on more recent models, you can be a bit more aggressive, as the quality of Games Workshop's resin has improved over the years. Need to be more careful here though, as these relics are part of the first plastic Chaos Marines set produced, so the plastic is very soft. Just as a quick comparison, look at the colour difference alone between one of the Marines and this Necron Immortal sprue that I had nearby. And just notice that this base isn't even from this millennium. Feeling old yet? Moving on to these metal parts though, and these are so robust that we can be as heavy-handed as we like. Good stuff. There's still a little bit of black primer here and there, but overall, I'm pretty happy with these results after just 5 minutes in that rubbing alcohol. Though I am now wearing most of the paint that came away. Just going to carefully use a craft knife now to chip away some of that nasty residue left over by some overzealous supergluing by my younger self. After a quick dip in alcohol, some light brushing and scraping, we're ready to reassemble our Noise Marines. I'm going to start off easy with this Marine. Now here's some nostalgia. Remember when sprues tended to come with separate hands and weapons? JamHammer remembers. So, back then, weapons had grips that you had to remove.
Oh, those were the days.
And you can see here, hands just held generic triggers, so you could attach any weapon you felt like to them. I'm just going to make this guy a plasma gunner. dab of superglue, and boom, done. It was a bit more tedious having to do this for a whole squad, and often the sculpts were quite generic, but with this layout you could easily customise your model's equipment for 40k. This was particularly useful for Necromunda and would be amazing for Kill Team, but would mean we didn't have to buy all these bespoke sets. Anywho, I digress. After cleaning away these sprue lines, that must have been there for over a decade, I'm just going to attach the arms with some polystyrene cement. And attach the quite BDSM looking head to the body. Hail Slaanesh, I guess? I thought the Sonic Blaster would make a great visual representation of the Malefic Bolt's equipment choice for our icon bearer here. This Marine is going to need a bit more attention though before he's ready to re-enter the fray. After doing the same as before, gluing the plastic arm with polystyrene cement and the metal arm with superglue, I'm left with this massive gap between the torso and the arm holding the gun. Just one of the issues with metal minis unfortunately, particularly these upgrade sets that didn't fit onto the base models well at all. To address this then, I'm going to use some modelling putty or green stuff. My preferred brand is Milliput, which is very affordable and does exactly what I need it to do, namely stuff it into gaps in my minis. This is a two-part epoxy, so we get a yellow tube and a blue tube of matter, mix them together in equal parts, like so, and end up with this slightly chalky green putty. Now, all I'm going to do is use the back of that craft knife again to work some of this into that gap. Bit janky at the moment, so take something narrow and smooth, I'm just wetting the back of a paintbrush handle for this, and then using that tapered tip, even out the putty, so that it sits flush with the shoulder pad and torso. Then, gonna blot away some of the excess water with kitchen paper. This has fallen too much into the recess, so now I'm just gonna repeat that process again with a little more Milliput. There we are. Just gonna make this look a bit more intentional now and add a few ridges going horizontally so that it resembles the style of the Sonic Blaster and appears as though a chaotic eruption has occurred to graft the weapon to our Marine. Modelling putty can also be really useful for filling in the gaps on slaughter bases. I'm doing this on this little fellow who I also found rattling around in my old stuff and thought would make a nice addition to hold the icon since our bearer literally has his hands tied. I have no idea what this mini actually is by the way, so if anyone out there could identify him, please do post it in the comments below. Finally, we have our Kill Team champion who will be made up of the bulk of our metal components. This Doom Siren backpack has been scraped clean, and I'm just going to use some more superglue which should hold this in place nicely as there's a little bit jutting out already for it to grip onto. I'm also going to chop clean through the hand holding the bolt pistol and upgrade our champion to a plasma pistol, which definitely wasn't harvested from some filthy loyalist scum. Again, just using a dab of plastic glue to hold this in place, and we should be all good. Now to affix all the other pieces. And one of the problems with metal minis is that gluing two flat pieces together doesn't give us the best hold, which is probably why these models had fallen apart when I found them. To remedy this, we're going to fix the models in place using a pin vise. So I'm going to place the smallest setting drill bit in here and start to gently scratch out a guide hole. This is about in the centre, so happy with that. Next, we'll start to drill this out in earnest. Once we've done a few twists and got a hole that's about 1/4 of an inch deep, we'll move on to the part we're attaching. We want to line these up again, and etch out another guide. Check that this lines up with the hole on the torso. Yep, and now we can deepen that with a few twists of our pin vise. Remember the golden rule, measure twice, drill once. Now that we have our two pieces drilled out, we can pin them together. This will give our pieces something to cling onto and will hopefully stop them from pulling apart quite so easily. you can use any thin piece of metal to act as our pin. I've heard that people have had good results with garden wire that you can pick up for very little cash, use paper clips, or this that I'm using here is actually stripped from the twist tie in a packet of rice cakes. I just used the craft knife to peel away the coating and snipped out a bit of wire. We want to sight this inside the hole and then see if it sits level. So the arm is still hovering away from the torso, which is no good, so the pin needs to be cut down again. Model snippers are perfect for this, and a pair of tweezers are really useful for something this fiddly. Let's line it up again. Yeah, that fits nicely now. So we're going to apply a little glue, pop the pin into the hole, and then thread this into the hole on the arm. Hold the two pieces together while the glue bonds, and there we go, a nice, secure hold between our two pieces. We can do the same between plastic and metal parts too. With a metal torso, head, arm, weapon, and backpack, our champion here is a little top heavy to say the least. To try and mitigate this, I've drilled a hole into the top of the legs and the bottom of the torso, so, like before, just going to thread a pin between the two and apply superglue. And that should hold them together a bit better. After attaching the plasma pistol arm too, we now have a complete kill team of old metal miniatures ready for painting up and bringing back to the table. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking it, subscribe to the channel, and clicking the bell to be notified of new videos being released. Even though Games Workshop doesn't make metal minis anymore, there are still loads of absolute classics out there being sold online, or, like these, just sitting unloved in a mouldy cardboard box. With just a little bit of effort and some very affordable materials, we can bring these back to life to see service again in our wargaming. I can see why metal minis were phased out, as they're expensive, difficult for the creator to sculpt, difficult for the hobbyist to work with, and are very prone to falling over and getting damaged. That said, nothing beats the nostalgia of getting to use these again. There's a weighty, tactile feel to the miniatures, and you can really appreciate the handcrafted work of the artisans that helped to forge these pieces of Warhammer history. There'll be more 40k videos being released in the near future, so please do keep an eye out for new content coming soon to JamHammer. In the meantime, there are plenty of other videos available on the channel, including a few that are on screen now for you to click on. Thanks again for watching.